I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD.
In 1942, 3 years into World War II, the Office of Strategic Services was founded. The OSS became the first independent intelligence agency of the United States and conducted multiple activities and missions, such as collecting intelligence by spying, performing acts of sabotage, espionage, waging propaganda war, domestic and abroad, and creating various spy gadgets and espionage weapons. The OSS looked into hypnosis as a way to get a hypnotized German target close to Hitler and then turn him into a killing machine with some kind of code word. The fascination of mind control and the possibility that this could be a reality was pursued. Who could control a subject's mind the fastest? Who could create the ultimate spy? Who could have their mind controlled to the degree to make it impossible for them to give up classified information? Control an entire army's minds, and you could create a troop of super soldiers whose morale would never waver, whose loyalty would never be tested. The practical applications of this technology were almost limitless, and if you think about it, absolutely terrifying. The OSS was dissolved in 1945, a month after the war.
Very big show. We have a very big show. We have a guest who's going to be joining us in a little bit here. His name is James Martinez. He's a media ecologist, as I was corrected earlier, ecologist. But he's one of the last known whistleblowers of the MK Ultra project. That's right. Well, with the recent discovery of the biolabs and everything that they're doing and all the experiments, you better believe that MK Ultra is back with a vengeance, but it's not called that anymore, and it's being done to just about everybody. James, good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Most appreciated.
Let's get into what we were talking about here in the beginning of tonight's show. And that is a very big concern of mine, and that is the falling of the dollar, which is inevitable. What say you on that front, James? Go ahead and fill us in on your angle of it.
Well, when I was working with Walter Boert, this goes back to the crypto space issue and currency as a whole. What I did when we were publishing Operation Mind Control Volume 2, I decided to go after the banks, specifically credit card companies. And I did so very publicly by essentially suing credit card companies for fraud and so forth. And that led into going to a lot of new doors in terms of teaching people how currency works, how the economic system works in the United States, what happens to fiat currencies, and ultimately what were the future currencies going to be. So I had a lot of access to some really high-level people. And when the crypto space started to open up, my first contingency, my first issue with everybody was asking, should I get some crypto? And I still get asked every single day. I mean, I get asked and approached by people in the crypto world a lot, not because of financial interest, but because of energy structure issues. And my thing is if you don't own the energy that it takes to generate any coin, crypto or otherwise, then you don't own it. And therefore you can be shut down. Server farms are totally vulnerable to solar flares, to natural disasters, everything. So There's no, it's not a hard asset. And I just don't tell people to go all the way in with that, because I've been very critical of it. Because if you don't generate and own energy from your own source, and you don't have to answer to somebody else on it, then you shouldn't really invest everything and put all your soul into that situation.
When people think of Bitcoin or crypto, they think of it, it's literally, and generally too, is always been a younger audience and a young man's kind of interest. And you can go to any of these events. Like I just went to one in Mexico, and the average age of people talking about crypto is anywhere from 25 to 50 something, but that's it. And you look at who has the wealth and the majority of wealth in the United States alone. Well, it's people in the retiring age and that have saved money. They don't know a damn thing about cryptocurrency, and it's a very, very difficult thing to explain. But here's what I'm asking is, we know that the petrodollar is pretty much going c'est la vie. And we see what Russia's doing. They're now using their own rubles and stuff. And India seems to be following. And here's the big one. Saudi Arabia and Iran are now forming an alliance, which tells you everything we need to know, James, that the petrodollar, the dollar based on every can of oil that the Saudis sell, is no more. Yes. What's going to replace this Illuminati-esque fiat that JFK tried to get rid of in the 1960s?
My first thoughts when you brought up Kennedy is that little film that you just showed with Schwab, and it said JFK in the background.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, so that we penetrate the capitalist.
And I looked at that and I'm like, if he only knew, he'd turn over in his grave saying that. Totally disgusted by what his name was being used for while those two were talking. But back to your question, I think they're going to see a major collapse by the end of the summer, July, August sometime. But since it's a staged, controlled demolition, so that the demolition is devised so that people can profit off that demolition, I see it going a bunch of different ways. But I don't think people will know when it does, when it has crashed, because there's going to be so much disinformation about that from people jockeying into position to try and capitalize on the beginning of what is going to be whatever next is. I have sources and people that I've talked to for years that I've not really put out there that have a completely different understanding and have been involved with the reconstruction of the new economy for 20 years. One of them is this gentleman right here, and Michael Cottrell, who wrote this thesis. And this was the thesis that was shown to the NSA in the bubble room with a bunch of top economists many years ago about how the deep state got all its money, how it was structured, how it was done, and ultimately what the future of money was going to be, because it's going to be a multitude of different things.
Yeah, I think so too. A viewer mentioned the other night in one of the live chats that it's going to be digital currency ran by China at the top. So I'm hearing that the new currency is going to be crypto, yes, blockchain, yes, but it's going to be backed by gold. What do you think we're about to see here in this never-ending movie that we're part of, from your point of view? Because you've been in the inside, James, and you have seen the who's who of how these things operate.
I see that they're going to, the corporation of the United States is going to be dissolved. It's already finished right now. They're just getting ready to demolish it, and then there's going to be a reformation. And Trump will be brought in as the viceroy. That's a word most people don't know, but he's going to be a new form of leader. It's complex because the people that I've spoken to about the new economic system, I was speaking to people at the Bank of International Settlements, World Bank, and other banks outside of the U.S., more than inside the U.S. This was in the 2001, 2002. And there was already preliminary planning going on about bringing in gold-backed world currency and what that would take to do. Yeah, oh yeah, the gentleman that wrote that thesis there, he's actively involved. He was not allowed to really talk in public for a long time because of Interpol asked him not to, because there's agreements that are already signed for a global world gold currency.
All right, let's expand on that. That's very key what you just said, because when this pandemic war initially started, and I said, well, someone's got to be leading this war. You just don't have a war. It's got to be somebody. So I started realizing there is a multipolar world order that had formed, with the head of it being China as number one, and number two is Israel. And there was an alliance that they had that stemmed all the way back to 2014, when they agreed to do the Red Rail train system that would have overlapped and sidestepped over the Suez Canal, which would have made them the key figures and owners of every major trade in that region. So who do you think is going to be sitting at the head of that financial just kingdom right there? Is it going to be China? Is it going to be the U.S. who's going to maintain the world reserve currency, if you will?
It's going to be the partners with Space Force. It's going to be that the high ground are going to be in charge. Because ultimately, we're going to have it's not going to be just an earthbound economy. It's going to be what we're doing on the moon. It's going to be a whole new space industry. It's going to be completely different. But I also think, because one of the things about talking about in public is words have power, and I don't always like to say bad things, but there's a lot of bad things that are going to occur before anything good happens. And one of those, we're going to have to clean house. And when Russia just switched over to gold, that was the beginning, the first step of a chain of reaction that's going to occur as the economy starts to fall to pieces, and the dollar ultimately is going to be finished, and so forth. So I just think that people are thinking in small terms. The people that I've spoken to that are inside it, that have contractual agreements with the installation of the gold system when it's time. They have a certain role in it. They've been involved with it since the very beginning. The gentleman, his name is Michael Cottrell. He's been public now. I've interviewed him a couple times, and he actually was involved with the takedown of George Bush, because George Bush, unbeknownst to a lot of people, almost became the richest man in the world, and it was stopped. He tried to take over all the banks, all the under infrastructure, the hidden economies of this world that nobody talks about. He tried to take over that entire thing. So what's going to come next is a combination of many things. I don't think it's going to be one currency. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they're going to win as a world government. It's not going to turn out that way.
No, it's not. I mean, there's so much kabuki theater, and I'm sure you can agree to that we're foreseeing and seeing right in front of us at the same time. And none of this makes sense. I mean, what are the odds that some of the biggest politicos on the DC Beltway, and now even including Bill Gates, all have the COVID-19 84, the virus from that bat who loves us? What are the odds that is mathematically impossible? Meaning, like you said, there's something going on. And I have now seen it, James, that I think the Russia-Ukraine debacle was sort of a distraction to keep UN and NATO troops at bay, while there's a domestic cleanup or some kind of movement or attempted movement that seems to be happening in the United States. So let's talk about this. What kind of resurgence? You talk about Space Force, and I think that's very key, because we haven't heard anything about Space Force since Trump was in office. But we know that China and their ambitions to get into space and now have their space program in Argentina. Well, that's just not a coincidence, is it? I think that this war is a kinetic war, and it's going to be fought either underground, which it has been, but also in space. Do you see that happening?
Oh, yeah. No, they're mining on the moon. There's what I've found in the last 6 months is that more people are, because of what's happening, they're violating the security agreements. They're coming out in public. They don't give a damn. And they're just going to start telling people what's really going on. And part of that has to do with the Disclosure Project and this resurgence of new UFO material that's being just handed out, and people aren't even catching on to it, what's going on, because it's either going to be used as psych warfare, or it's going to be used as a strategic move to prepare the public for interstellar economy with what's going on at the moon. Because all these plans that these people are getting on and speaking about in their new kind of smart city bullshit isn't going to work, because all the infrastructure is not set up at all. They're all full of shit. I mean, I wish I was in a room with some key media people to tell them what engineers and the people that actually construct and make this world, where our capabilities are versus what we're doing. I mean, it drives me crazy. I mean, I just attended the Earth X Summit meeting, where all the financial people met with the legislators that met with all the green tech people, and it was pathetic. They were the big elephant in the room, and nobody's talking about anything. We're going to have this much capital. We're going to have this much growth while the whole world economy is going down the toilet. They're talking about what they're all these Harvard MBAs are getting up making speeches in front of everybody with big mics and big telemonitors. And I was pathetic. I was asked by a bunch of people there, so what do you think? What do you think? And I'm like, this is a big pile of bullshit. And why are you here even listening to any of this? It's pathetic.
Okay, let's get into that, because this was in California, correct? What you attended here.
In Texas.
Because now this gets into, let's get into what's going to rejuvenate now. Now we know that there's a gold-backed currency of the digital realm that seems to be coming, and we can't avoid it no matter what. The deep state really is the dollars and the Federal Reserve currency. That's deep state monopoly money.
There was a discovery made in 1989 with Stanley Pons and Fleischmann and at the University of Utah. And at that time, that was the biggest news story in the world, as how that fusion was recreated at room temperature at the University of Utah. And then what happened, and there was a worldwide news. It was on cover of Time, Newsweek, every major news agency covered it, because they said, okay, we've arrived. We've solved the energy crisis. We finally figured out a way where we can have abundant energy, clean energy at room temperature, and then do it in a very manageable, controlled way. And this was the birth and the death of that new science, because people have no idea what the hell has happened behind the scenes when that happened. People were killed. There were death threats. There was movies made about this. There was espionage going on. There's people breaking into labs.
Right.
There was careers were destroyed, everything because of this idea originally back then. They hadn't even been recreated it yet, is that if you have cold fusion at room temperature and you reproduce it, and it has what's called non-entropy or over unity, you solved your problems. You solved everything. Why? Because you have never-ending abundant energy coming from hydrogen, hard water. And then at this point, that was an announcement that the day it was announced, somebody lost $800 million in a big contract in the nuclear industry, and people got really pissed off. And the careers of Stanley Pons and Fleischmann were destroyed after that. Stanley Pons lives down in southern France, has never talked to anybody since. Bob Fleischmann passed away. I was in a couple of documentary films about this when this was all. I basically when I went public about Operation Mind Control Volume 2, which was what I was involved with, in the contents of that book, it had to do with the further details of MK Delta, which is the operational word of MK Ultra. This is like the program that was set up and now was set out to be put in the public. I was involved with the heads of the Freedom of Thought Foundation. It was Colonel Fletcher Prouty, Walter Boert, Colonel Tom Bearden, who just passed away, and then another gentleman that was a whistleblower that was tortured, and he was a lawyer, McGuffin. We were on the board of the Freedom of Thought Foundation, and two of the things that were the key issues that we talked about to rectify and liberate the human condition was one, repeal the National Security Act, and two, deploy cold fusion for the entire world. Because of the nature of it. It's the most disruptive, dangerous, gnarliest thing you could ever have out, because the fact of the matter is people are reproducing it everywhere. It's in multiple countries. It's being developed. Japan is second behind us. But you have to think of this when you're audience. You have to think of this in terms of effects. Always think of technology in terms of effects, sociological conditions, and money. Because this is the one thing where everybody can have the access to this, and you'd be spending about roughly $10 for your energy for an entire year. That's very conservative. Governments know this. They all know, and they're full of all this green tech lecturing and off bullshit that you hear every day. It's a fucking lie, and people need to get that through their head, because all these that you see on TV selling us the world's end, they could have fixed everything years ago. All the technical people, I know. I've dealt with DARPA, the Pentagon, military, admirals, DITRA, MIT. They all know. They all know. So my main issue is telling the public, your elected employees haven't told you about anything, nothing. And that comes from me, from my perspective. I was part of the expose of that was one of the biggest secrets the government ever had, was behavioral software and deploying it and using it against the public. We were the guys. We were before everybody. We had no intention of commercializing and become big celebrities having to do with mind control. That wasn't the aim at all. We're extremely ethical. We were like, this needs to go out in book form, and then the powers that be, Department of Justice, local law enforcement, all the people that are supposed to do their job, they're the ones that are supposed to handle it, not us. That was one of the biggest secrets the government ever had, was behavioral software and deploying it and using it against the public.
I started realizing there is a multipolar world order, with the head of it being China as number one.
I'm very much impressed by Israel's level. It's really world class.
In number 2 is Israel.
Israel excels in solar technology that, with investment and manufacturing expertise from China,
And there was an alliance that they had.
China and Israel are already working together on several alternative and renewable energy fronts.
They agreed to do the Red Rail train system. There has been some kind of backstabbing, disagreement, because Israel wants to be number 1.
Always think of technology in terms of effects, sociological conditions, and money. I was very young when this happened, and I came in with volume 2 of the book, because the original book came out in 1978. And people don't even know the name Walter Boat at all, because most people don't do their research, and they don't know who that guy was and how important he was. Because yes, I did talk to Ted Gunderson, and I found out about Epstein and all these people. Most people don't know that Walter Boat started the alternative press in the United States. He also testified before Congress, and he knew the Kennedys quite well, because I met with Robert Jr. Recently. He knew all about it. People don't know the whole story about what happened at all. It's never been really told at length in the public space at all. And my involvement with cold fusion had to do with the liberation of the human condition. You have to have your own energy and enough of it to decentralize and control your own space and control your own community. Now's everybody's chance to do that, because of something that's going to be coming up in the next couple of months. I mean, I'm just getting ready to talk to the big press people right now and military people that I know about what this is a big moment in history right now that people need to pay attention to, because unless they repeal the National Security Act, none of the public is really going to know what we really have. And we have everything to fix everything. Yet we're being lectured by everybody every single day that's the end of the world.
It's absurd to think there's no cure for the common cold still. I mean, how absurd is that, just for starters?
I was at this big summit meeting with 2 people that were congressional people in Texas, and another guy that was running for office. And they asked to sit with me quietly because I was telling them about why I was at this energy summit. And I said, are you doing A, B, C, D? Do you know about this thing? They're all running for office. They don't know jack about what's going on. This is in Texas. This is in Texas, like the red state. Oh, the Lone Star of Texas. Like they know what's going on. They don't know anything that's going on at all. It's pathetic. It's really pathetic. I was disappointed. They're like, taking notes and saying, okay, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And I said, well, look, have you done anything with the child trafficking? We told you in 78 and we told you in 1990. What more are you doing? Have you arrested anybody? No. Have anybody been prosecuted? No. Nobody does anything. So I this is like when we came out with this material and everybody built their platforms off and did all their and became these so-called freedom fighters or whatever. They didn't fix anything. They didn't fix anything. Nothing was done. It sounds like I'm ranting and raving here, but the public, your audience, they're all over the place. They need to know this. They don't know this stuff. They don't know all the mechanics of mind control at all. I've listened to a lot of people and they touch along their surface, but they don't get into the mechanics because it requires work to do so.
I thought it was interesting when we spoke last that you said the big tech involvement of trying to obtain this great, this wonderful new system, as you're talking about, is incredible. How big tech, the government of Silicon Valley over us, wants to have put their sticky fingers. Yeah,
they're all involved. All the shit that they say that they're going to do, none of it is possible until they have enough infrastructure. For one, they don't, and they need the energy to do so, and they haven't done that. If they had it all, they'd already be doing it. And they're like, Musk is out and everybody that he's got it all taken care of. He doesn't. I met with an astronaut at this conference, and it was really interesting conversation because this was the SpaceX winner, Dr. Sean Proctor, I believe her name is. She was the winner of SpaceX, and I was at this party in Dallas, and she sat right next to me. I didn't know who she was at first. I recognized her because everybody's taking pictures with her, and this guy that was sitting next to me said, why don't you talk to the astronaut? Talk to the astronaut. Tell him why you're here. I'm like, okay. So I started talking to her and said, hey, how are you? And then I said, what are you doing? Like working for SpaceX? And she goes, well, what do you do? I'm like, okay, well, I do this, and I'm here because I'm talking to investment people about technology and, getting a lot of strange questions. And I've been involved with MK Ultra, and I was one of the last survivor of that in the original book. Really? I said, well, let's talk about you because that's more interesting. Why are you being involved with the space industry? Don't you realize you're being completely, totally used? and there's like 2 space programs and you're in the fake one, and they're just using you all over the world, putting you up on stages, bullshitting you, and giving you a lot of media validation to make you feel like you're actually doing something. Then I start telling her what's really going on, and this is the face that I get. Don't leave. I have to come back. I need to talk to you. That's the face.
Interesting.
I asked her, I said, what was it like to go out and say flat or not?
James, I think we lost you as soon as you said flat Earth, and boom, we almost lost you. Careful,
Yeah.
that is that's the secret word that might get us all shut down. We have a hard break coming up here, James, and when we get back, let's get into the thick of the MK Ultra. We have we have a lot of new people. This is new for them in this great awakening and time of it that are really finding this out for the first time. So stand by there, James. We're going to take a quick break. Hold on to your hats there. Wow. Anyways. Thank you for waiting here. This is World at War. And if you are just learning now that, we're talking about things you haven't heard elsewhere, well, then you're learning right. And that's right, because I only bring the best here, and very good people at that. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break. But when we get back, we're going to get into just exactly what was going on in these Ukrainian biolabs, or whatever they were, just cafeterias, as we call them, and how that is actually pertains to some of the experience that James Martinez has had in his previous experiences, in yesteryear. And we're going to get into what he actually did experience. And then we'll finally get into what does he think is going to happen here, and what can we do as Americans, as Australians, as South Africans, as people of the world? What can we do to prepare for this great time of challenge in this World War III module? So anyways, we're going to take a quick break, go to the lobby. When we get back, all that and more, and we're just getting started. Jim, you want to change your vote? You can still do it at this time.
No, I want to say we have a wonderful pizza place here called Sugar River Pizza, and they've got specialty pizzas that are to die for. I want to mention 2 in particular: ricotta, be kidding me, red sauce, pepperoni sausage, whipped herb, ricotta, and oregano, and kicking horse for a war. Red sauce, pepperoni, sausage, jalapenos, red onion, pepper jack. Those are 2 unbelievably good pizzas.
Yeah. We're back in a riveting conversation with James Martinez here, and it's just an incredible night. We don't get these kind of very deep dive, intricate discussions often, James, but when we do, we wholeheartedly appreciate it. I don't know if you could see this most effective audience around the world who are watching us tonight. Really love to hear this, because like you said, the people need to know. They want to know. People are hungry for information. People might not know everything, but they know that they're not being told the truth. And I tell people, you don't have to be an intellectually wizard, a smart individual like Einstein or anything to understand this, but you have to understand that what we're being told is not the case. Now, let's get back into this where we last left off. And if you're just joining us, we were talking about cold fusion, about these new kind of technologies for the new future, because I was saying, it's not going to be like the smart cities that they keep bragging about. Just like Adolf Hitler's plan of the superior race and everything he was trying to do, that never panned out. So it's always something else. But then we find this bio labs in Ukraine. James, let's pick up on that, and then we can go to the future now. What is now? How would you explain MK Ultra? What the purpose, what the original intent was, then what it became, and then whether it still exists, which we know it does. But what are they using with it now in modern era?
MK Ultra, in terms of us proving that it exists, was the examination of Vietnam veterans. That's how it started. Walter Boert, who was my best friend and business colleague, he figured this out when he started talking to his neighbor. And his neighbor was a Vietnam vet, and he was reporting that he had lost his mind. He couldn't remember certain things. Big chunks of time were missing. He had horrible nightmares, different problems with cognitive function, problems with pair bonding with anybody, no trust of anybody at all, inability to be in a relationship, all sorts of effects that were altering his ability to have a normal functioning life. That is how Operation Mind Control, the first version, came out in 1978. 1978, people, okay? When that happened, there was no internet. The chosen form of communication that was most respected at that time was the written book. And I found out the whole reason why this was put out and what conditions, because at that time, prior to that, Walter Bort was the kind of the original person that started the underground press syndicate out of New York. He started something called the East Village Other, which was probably like the free kind of first free speech, revolutionary, underground alternative press. And after he was in New York, there was a lot of assassination attempts on him and so forth while he was in New York with drugs. Because he was very much part of the LSD movement into the United States, but because that was related to MK Ultra, because they're always testing on the public, even now, every day, 7 days a week, all the time. It's not like a stop-start thing. They test drugs, they test electromagnetics, they do it all without your permission, and they're doing it nonstop, and they've been doing it nonstop.
They want to push the psilocybin mushrooms now. The CIA is all behind that. That's why we see all the legislation to put that in the mix. I see how these things go.
Behavioral legislators, which are the United States Psychiatry Association and the people that write the DSM-5. The DSM-5 are the people that are legislating consciousness. They're the ones that label conditions, and then once those conditions are labeled, then they have an imprint with law, and then they can control people, diagnose people, label people, and then box them in based upon the effects that they're having from drugs that are happening in the culture, which are being put there on purpose and been by design. So the first book, Operation Mind Control, addressed all the experimentation, where it was being done, why it was being done, where the money was coming from. And then the purpose of that was to initiate and tell the public early that there was this new technology. And that new technology was being able to alter the behavioral function by inducing and sticking inside somebody behavioral software that could run somebody like a robot and respond to people's orders and show up on time and do certain things and certain tasks and so forth. And this is pretty much came from and was discovered because of Walter Bart looking at Vietnam vets, because Vietnam vets, and he was very, very pro-Kennedy. He believed in freedom. He believed in cognitive liberty. He believed in the non-legislation of drugs. I think that he thought very much, because he was very involved with the drug culture. In fact, it was Tim Leary that set him up with his wife, Peggy Hitchcock Mellon, at Mellon Bank, Federal Reserve. Hello. That was all set up. People don't know anything about Tim Leary working for CIA and all that stuff.
I knew that part.
So, I knew that part. So Walter was there at the beginning. I came in for the second book because the second book had to do with Delta, which was the active working term used for the behavioral software that was now working out in society, because they'd insert into cults. Cults are very, very important in the United States in terms of R&D to determine how group dynamics work. Group dynamics, and like remember when they did the January 6th thing? That anybody where there's going to be a crowd of people that are in revolutionary and want to change the world, they're all going to be penetrated. They're all going to be screwed with, because I've experienced it myself on a completely different term. So they should have expected that. They love that.
Say too. And another classic example, James, was the Jonestown, massacre, the Kool-Aid, which I believe Jim Jones. Well, he was working for the housing urban development in San Francisco, meaning he was most likely a CIA asset. And they were doing an experiment to see how much they can control people with linguistics, with, kind of this Plato's theory, and then ultimately to kill themselves. And then they wound up killing people that were going to blow the whistle out, that tried to escape. And to my knowledge, too, James, I don't know if you knew, O.J. Simpson's mother was there, too. That's how connected a lot of these things are. It's just very connected.
What a shock. What a shock.
I know. Out of all the people, her. Why her? So, but continue, James. Continue. You're talking about the second book and how this keeps, they keep rebranding themselves. They rebrand themselves like Klaus Schwab trying to rebrand himself now as trust and care, work together. I love you, all this stuff. Go ahead, please.
When I was looking at the woman you had put up the chart of all the bioweapons, and I see the first person I look up there and I see who else? Bathhouse Barry Soetoro. Barack Obama. Hello, let's not leave that out. Who he really is, where he came from, and why the intelligence community calls him Mama Michael. Mama Michael. Hey, did you see what Mama Michael did when somebody talks about the intelligence community? They're talking about Barack Obama because they know the guy's complete, total walking of sexual abuse, conflict, repressed sexuality, total bullshit, and a complete up person with all the other fucked up people that he deals with and the bankers that run him.
He's got to be, persona numero uno of like the major arrest that would happen that would shock the world, because every time that any kind of heat has come on Barack Obama and that fake name that John Brennan gave him, let's get to that. Dr. Frankenstein at the top there. He's probably the worst, but every time that there's heat on Obama, then you get a Planned Parenthood 1, which we got May 29th of 2020. Barack Obama, Mr. Satanic Council,
he's running the whole thing.
Of course he is. And where is he now? What underground layer is he in? Because he is running it. If he's even still with us, I don't know. But he is running it. And everything that we have seen has been an Obama production, all the way up to George Floyd, the fake dead guy with his coworker there, with the fake cop.
He had a hand in breaking up the royal family. He's had a hand in everything that's going on in Ukraine. He's had a hand at ending free speech and legalizing propaganda onto the public with the Smith-Monk Act, as you know. I mean, he's been involved. The guy is so disassociated. It's not even funny. I mean, there's only a couple real ways to really locate the real Barry Soetoro. And probably the only thing that I would suggest that would even be legal would be he has to be put in an alternative state for the real person to come out. Because the real person is completely, totally different than what people see. And he's been severely abused. He's highly disassociated. He has no empathy. He hates black people. I mean, I know people that know that went to college with him as Barry Soetoro. He didn't like black people then. He doesn't like black people now. He doesn't like really people. He likes money. He used to be a gay grifter. I mean, that's what he's basically doing now, but for bigger money. Because he's totally blackmailed. He's totally blackmailed, totally controlled. He's going to be disposed of because his real goal is to be Secretary General of the UN. And that's
that's what it is. That's what it is, James. And a lot of people don't understand this Barry Soetoro, which, by the way, we did research on it. He was a constitutional lawyer that nobody remembers, for starters. But he only did 5 cases. 3 of them were car parking, speeding tickets, and some very low level who get kind of cases. Right. But this guy, his mother was in the CIA. And his father, Frank Marshall Davis, was a huge communist rebel rouser. And he was born in Jakarta. Yeah, the whole thing was just made up. This is what the CIA does. And Michelle Obama, don't even get me started. I haven't eaten yet. Just hold on a second. But
he pair bonded. He pair bonded with his nanny. That's where the sexual abuse first took place, because his nanny was a transsexual. That's what happened. Because what's happened is, this is why the MK Ultra thing ultimately it should receive way more attention. People get too caught up in all the behavioral dynamics and Jason Bourne. That it is important, but the real important part is this country doesn't protect children. We didn't care then. We don't care now. We are selfish, and we're paying for the price for having a complete generation that have been abused in these programs. They're ruling over us. What people are experiencing now and what they're seeing in the overlord of the leaders that are running the world are people that have all been traumatized and sexually abused. And those people, because people, when they get one of the effects of abuse like that, later on, when the person goes through puberty and they come into their younger years, one of the formidable effects from child abuse or any of the experimentation is having power over others to play back what was done to them. They need to have power over others, and they need to rule over others, and they get off on it because they're reenacting the trauma that basically, when imagine anybody that's watching this, if your life is threatened, really threatened, and you could die, your entire central nervous system changes, your brain changes, your entire physiology changes, and then when that structure happens and then the switch goes off, that is embedded. That is the PTSD. That is what happens when you abuse children, because later on, they become disassociated adults. They inwardly self-destruct or they outwardly self-destruct. And this, you can study MK Ultra and all the books and everything, fine. But if you're not protecting children, because I've always been about resolution and fixing the problem. Now, I could care less about talking about it all day. I'd rather go out and see legislation fixed to protect children. Because what we're dealing with today are the people that were abused. They rule over us. Because disassociated people, they don't have empathy. None. They don't have empathy. They don't know what it is. If you ask them how they're feeling, they don't know what that means. They don't have access to their own feelings, let alone yours. And I've been with lots of people that have been in these programs and talked to them privately. It takes a long time to get to the core personality of who was there when the problem started and what happens when they get in these systems. And this is what we've had. It's a big, gigantic, huge mess. And still today, nobody's been prosecuted. Nobody's been prosecuted for any of this. Still.
Okay, so this is a good point, and I know we're running on fumes here in times of essence, but I want to get into just a little bit of this because, when Trump came into office, he signed 3 or 4 executive orders that really, for the first time, any president has ever done to combat child trafficking. The first one was signed, I believe, December 22nd, 2017, and then followed by another one, which allowed to freeze the assets of people involved. And there were names that were listed in the executive order, all connected to the Clinton Foundation, who you can make a case their headquarters really is in Haiti, if you know what I mean. They love Haiti. Yeah. So does Beyonce and Barry. They love Haiti. They just love Hades. So anyways.
Lots of fresh meat over there for them.
That's right. In fact, I would believe that if I had to take a guess, James, of where Barack Obama really is, not the CGI version or the puppetry ones, I would assume that he's somewhere in Indonesia or the Philippines retrieving the gold that he was and all the other riches he stashed away as he fled the United States. And don't ask me how I know that, but I'll tell you later. And
there's massive amounts of stolen and hidden gold that are off the books that I knew about with Michael Drell and other bankers, and that's part of this reinstruction of the whole global economy. That's going to come into play. That, as well as the kind of an interstellar economy, which has already started.
In regards to MK Ultra, and it's such a huge topic that James could probably teach a 10-hour course over a weekend if you wanted to. It's probably more than that. But it is a massive subject. We see the MK Ultra happening in broad daylight. I play a show like The View, for example. Now, we both all see that as stupid, but it's actually not, in the sense they're using linguistic mind control that affects the feminine, the female mind, the emotions. And that's why when we watch sports these days, we're not just watching sports. We're watching a heartstring, just kind of a storyline connected to an athlete of the struggles he had to get to where he is today for a reason. And what I'm saying, James, is I think the MK Ultra that I know of, that I can see, is specifically aimed at women, and specifically women in the West. And because, like Hitler said, if you have the women, then you have the children, so follow the men. And that's exactly what they're doing. This is a page out of the Third Reich, in the Fourth Reich now, called the World Economic Forum, right in broad daylight. So here's the question before the conclusion here is besides that, or in addition to that, rather, what other techniques, programs, or methods are being used on everyday people that we may not know?
All of it's hidden. It's all electromagnetic. They've already offset and extended the central nervous system. And by extending the central nervous system, our whole physiology has had to go through complete total changes from all the effects of that, which include instantaneous communications, pattern interruptions, electromagnetic stress, changes in all communications. People are numb, basically, from the effects of electricity. They've been electrocuted, essentially, is what's happened. And that's just the start of it, because they're being augmented right now and going through extensive physical stress from 5 and 6G and so forth, which are going to be implemented in kind of kill grids all over the world. There's things you can counter to all this, but you have to take long media fasts. You have to unplug from everything. You have to literally go into nature and just cut yourself off for an extended period of time to kind of recalibrate your central nervous system.
Exactly. Same with the people that took the miracle jabs. You have to treat it like Morgellons and to rid it from your body with zeolite and all kinds of other, natural things. I do believe there is hope for those people that have done that. So anyways, to close this off, and then we have a question for you coming. What do you see coming down the pikeway that we should be aware of, prepared for? And, we've talked about the Trump factor. Do you see that Trump has part of the problem, the solution, or we're unsure? So kind of in your closing.
There's going to be a major 911 event. They need an event like that. And my thoughts that it is either going to be a nuclear weapon or it's going to be the extraterrestrial disclosure. I tend to think it's going to be that, actually, because they need an invisible enemy to blame it on. So I've seen all the new disclosures that are happening now indicate all this new stuff is coming out, which means the entire equation is changing for everything. Because now they're admitting that they back engineered multiple technologies and used it to themselves over everybody while they try and take control of everybody. There's a whole bunch of other things that are going to happen in the interim. So it really is the biggest chess match on earth that's about to happen. But they need something to disrupt everybody. A big event to do that, where they can leverage the effects of that to win, essentially. That's what I think is going to be happening.
That's so interesting you said that. I've heard of as close and soon as 2024, a Project Bluebeam may be enacted on the American people. We see weird, bizarre things happening in China daily. They had a red sky the other night. We just showed something that happened in Florida. A viewer sent us. People said it's SpaceX or something, Elon Musk. But the amount of new technology in the air that we have seen in the past 2 years alone, that right there tells me that there's no skeptics anymore. At least we know, yes, there's something we don't know, and it's only increasing. The master plan and objective is, and ultimately has always been, because of the technocratic dictators, is transhumanism. I don't see, that is the ultimate goal, what they want. They want to rid the humans. We're living in a post-human era where they see us as the cockroaches. And because they have their sex dolls, they can just grow humans if they want a sex slave underground. They don't want resistance. They don't want free will. This is like serfdom on steroids times 50 and hell on earth. And that's the ultimate goal. That's what brought us the transgenderism. That's what brought us the confusion and the ideological subversion. Is ultimately
training wheels.
Yes, it was the 21 goals of the Illuminati. Then they transferred it into the UN Agenda 21. Now it's Agenda 2030. They moved the goalposts. But to me, that's what it's all about, is the transhumanist agenda.
I was told about the transhuman agenda and plan in the early 90s. With Walter Bower told me, Colonel Tom Bearden told me, Fletcher Crowder told me. Also, Virgil Armstrong told me, the OSS guy. But I was ignorantly optimistic that wouldn't occur, because when I was looking at what would have to happen for society to get that way, I said, no, there's no way it's going to get that bad. I was horribly wrong. And now that it's come to fruition, I can see that this is just merely the spiritual warfare and attack on women. They're attacking women and the godhead of women and the reproductive system of women and women as a species. They're under full attack. And it's our duty to do something about it as men. And ultimately, I think, as I said in the past, this ultimately has to do with our own spiritual ascension and our arrival at Godhead.
James, we could talk for just forever and a day, and we just might after the show tonight. But I want to thank you for coming on. You just, this is a friendly place. We hope you can come back and maybe talk about some other lighter things, whatever you'd like to at your, at your leisure. Any final words or things you want to share?
Yeah, I would tell you, your audience, everybody, this is far from over. And the most important part is that black, white, red, yellow, brown, everybody needs to come together. This is an incredible opportunity for everybody to come together. I was speaking yesterday with one of the foremost leaders of the American Indians in the United States yesterday, who's a woman. And she told me at the end of the conversation, this is the Lakota Sioux. They have been in nonstop war with the United States. And they said, she told me, she goes, Russell means the Lakota Sioux, and freedom means something in this country. And the American Indians will rise again and show the world that liberty and freedom and truth and justice matters. That came from yesterday from one of the main leaders in the United States. And I've seen her speak in Washington, and she gets a standing ovation every time. And there's a reason for that, because people know what she's saying is true. It is true.
Well, it's true. And it's why they when they do these rollouts of the miracle jabs, it's why they always go after the natives first, whether it's the Aborigines.
They know who they are. Yes, they do. And that's why they've been trying to get rid of those people. And they're still here. They're still here.
That's right. And some of them are right in front of you. And it tells you people this is a spiritual war. But James, thank you very much. James Martinez, everybody. We just love him and appreciate him, and follow his work, please. Wow. You never know who's going to come to Mr. Ryan's neighborhood. And that's the kind of little housing block we live on here.